Welcome to your real estate review with Alan Canas of Engel Völkers, Silicon Valley, your weekly getaway to the pulsating heart of the global real estate market. Join us as we bring you exclusive interviews with top producing real estate agents from around the globe. Whether you're a buyer, a seller, or just a real estate enthusiast, this is your insider look into the pros, cons, and the captivating allure of the world's most sought after locations. Let's discover where your next dream home awaits. Buckle up for a real estate journey like no other. This is your real estate review with Alan Canas of Engel Völkers, Silicon Valley. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to or viewing the real estate review with Alan Canas. That's me, with Engel Völkers, Silicon Valley. We are talking today with the fabulous, beautiful Dolly Hertz of New York City. Welcome, Dolly. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to speak to your people.
Perfect. Wonderful. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your background in real estate and your specific experience with clients relocating to New York City?
Right. So one of the main reasons I joined Engel Völkers is that it is an international company. And I speak three languages fluently, German, Italian, and French. And that's why I wanted to join a company that would enable me to meet people coming to New York from other places in Europe that I could make feel comfortable by speaking to them in their native language. So from the jump, this is kind of what I've been specializing in, working with international people, getting them settled in New York.
I did not know you spoke several languages. That's wonderful.
I do.
Please tell us how, when, and why you got into real estate, decided to make this your career.
Right. So I've only been in real estate for the past 13 years. I was in advertising and marketing for a couple of decades. And around 2011, print media and the magazine industry, which was the industry that I served with my marketing endeavors, basically was in a steep decline. And I realized that it was time for me to close that business. So I wanted to do something completely new that I knew nothing about, no experience and no contacts, which is generally how I tend to organize my life. I just take a jump off of a cliff. And I came into New York and I started working at a different brokerage that was not as good of a fit for me until I learned that Engel Völkers was opening their first office in New York. And as luck would have it, I received a recruiting call a short time thereafter. And it's the perfect place for me to work.
My favorite story that you've told is that you left the last brokerage and you literally had your things and you were running down the street to the Engel Völkers office.
It was only 5 blocks, and when they invited me for the appointment, I just put all my stuff in a box and ran there. I couldn't get there fast enough.
That says a lot. I love it.
It's been a great fit for me ever since.
What do you think some of the unique features or attractions of New York that make it an appealing destination for people looking to relocate? I know there's so many things you could talk about, but what are a few of the main points?
For the most part, people are coming here to be in the financial world, in the business world, whether it be banking or the stock market, or a lot of people that I work with are coming here to go to school or to have their first jobs or to really just try something new. But really it's for work, school, or a lot of people are coming here because they are retired and they want to live in a completely fresh place. I do mostly get people that come to New York to try it out. They start with a rental of 1 year, and then they fall in love with a particular neighborhood, and they decide they want to go forward with an apartment, and then maybe a year later they want to go forward with a larger apartment. So I think it's an easy city to move within.
How would you describe the current real estate market in New York City, and what trends should potential relocators be aware of?
Well, it's not cheap. It never.
Coast to coast.
Yeah, it's definitely not cheap. It's exciting. You know, people For New York, coming to New York, people often tell me this has been a dream of theirs for a long time. And when you take them up into a
Wow.
beautiful apartment building on the 24th floor and they see the view of Central Park or of the whole city, or you take them downtown and they see what it's like at the South Street Seaport or buildings down there with views of the Hudson, people fall in love and they make accommodations. So oftentimes those accommodations will be a one bedroom because it's more affordable than a two bedroom. There are accommodations based on neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods are just much pricier than others. But what I always tell people, you may not end up in the neighborhood you thought initially you wanted to be in, but everybody who ends up in a neighborhood ends up loving the neighborhood they're actually in. That it happened to me when I moved here the same way.
New York City has always been one of my favorite cities. It's in the top three. So I can understand why people are flocking there and how they can fall in love with it so quickly. What are some of the common challenges or pitfalls that people face when relocating to New York City? And how do you help them navigate through this?
One of the things that is unique to New York is the structure of the type of ownership that you will encounter. So the apartment buildings fall into two categories: condominiums and cooperatives, and it's a very different type of ownership. Co-ops resemble freestanding home ownership that most people are familiar with. Cooperatives, you're not owning your actual walls and floor, but you're buying shares in a building that is commonly owned and governed by a board of directors. In either case, it's not a simple transaction, whether it's a co-op or a condo building. You very much need your own representative to help you put together what's usually about 900 pages worth of financial documents
Wow.
that I help my people organize and that gets submitted to the board for approval.
Wow.
So it's not a city that I would recommend going on your own.
That's some good advice. Definitely. Can you give us a sense of lifestyle in New York City? What are the local communities like, and what kind of amenities can a newcomer expect?
We run the gamut. You've got Madison, Fifth Avenue, glitzy, uptown style mansions, very expensive high rise buildings overlooking Central Park. You've got more modest Upper East Side residences closer to the East River, where it's really the best bargain in town. You've got Midtown East, where there's a lot of business, but it's also a great place to live, which I know because I live here in Midtown East. You have the whole exciting young people stuff going on downtown: Chelsea, Flatiron, Gramercy, South Street, Seaport, Greenwich Village, Lower East Side, all what are considered to be hip, young neighborhoods, but also where the people with a lot of money have gentrified neighborhoods like Soho and the Village, which have really driven prices up down there. So a lot of the young people that were residing down there have now migrated to areas of Brooklyn, which subsequently have also become gentrified, and they're being pushed further out into the further areas of Brooklyn. So it's the same story that has always been true of New York. An area catches on, the artists and hip young people move in, then it catches on with the wealthy people who drive prices up, and the young people move on to the next neighborhood. So one of the one of the good things about being of helping people navigate this in New York is that I'm on top of the neighborhoods. I can advise them where they can get the most for their money, where the what the next up and coming area is going to be so we can get in there ahead of the curve.
With that information, how does the weather affect a person's choice of moving to New York or decision to moving to New York?
The weather in New York,
Yeah.
it's really not a factor. I mean, It's one thing. I know my daughter just moved back to New York from your area in Northern California, where the weather is perfect year round.
Yeah.
Um, we definitely have seasons in New York. We have four seasons. We have it um, not too hot summer. We have gorgeous fall. We have not too cold, not as cold of, or snowy of a winter as we used to have with global warming, and of course, magnificent springtime weather. So I don't see anything prohibitive about the New York weather. It's
Okay.
just you will have four seasons for sure.
I always say for California, we have the seasons here as well. We just don't know which day it's going to land on.
Okay.
Yeah.
True.
Um, from your perspective, what are the top benefits that someone should be considering when moving to New York City?
There's a lot that you can see and do. I mean, there's cultural, there's Broadway theater, there is there are the elevated cultural arts. There's Lincoln Center, ballet, opera, the New York Philharmonic. You've got off Broadway theater all over downtown, and also the Upper West Side. You've got, I mean, if you like food, New York is definitely a foodie town. You've got every conceivable type of cuisine at every conceivable price point. What I always say about New York is there's something for everyone. You have nightclub entertainment. You can do incredible sightseeing of very classic places to sightsee: the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty. You can take a boat ride around Manhattan Island. It's endless, and I haven't even started to talk about the shopping yet, which
The shopping's one of my favorite parts about New York
the
City.
shopping, the shopping and the fashion.
Yeah, and your fashion is amazing. I love seeing your
Thank you.
posts, and in fact, you were a topic of conversation when I was in Tahoe, and because your look is so fabulous. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, in what ways do you, as a real estate agent, provide value to someone relocating to New York City? How do you differentiate yourself from other agents in New York?
I think that my main differentiation is running as fast as I can and attention to every detail that you, as the buyer or seller, need to feel comfortable. So that if I know you're coming in to look for a property, I will block out 3 days and I will book out 30 properties to see in 3 days. Now, how do you see 30 properties in 3 days? Well, you have a driver and a nice, large, comfortable car where I provide lunch and water, and we quickly move from one location to another, and then we can always pivot and revisit things that might have been popular on the first round. But I really, especially for someone who's new to New York, I use the 3 days to investigate three or four different neighborhoods that I think might be suitable for my buyer. Because when people come to New York, they say, well, I've heard Gramercy would be a good place to be. And I say, well, who did you hear it from? Well, my sister's uncle's cousin's grandmother told me that she once was in Gramercy and she kind of liked it. So that's not a great reason to pick
Yeah.
that neighborhood. So one of my jobs is to match you with a neighborhood that I think you will like and be able to afford. So we have a conversation ahead of time, and hopefully people are open to my recommendations of where we should be looking. I really think that my job is to help guide you in making a good decision for you. There are brokers that let the buyer take the lead on everything and say, these are the ones I want to see. And they don't put any thought into what really would be right for that buyer. I take the opposite approach. I really try to get to know the buyer's needs. And based on my knowledge of the listings all over the city and the buildings, and that's really important as a broker, that you know the different buildings and what they will offer that person. So based on that information and experience, I can expose them to the correct, hopefully correct property for them.
That's good information. Thank you. What is the one piece of advice you would give a potential buyer relocating to New York City?
I think be open.
Okay.
Be open to something you hadn't considered before. When I moved back into the city some years ago, I always thought I wanted to live on the Upper East Side. I thought that was the place for me. But it turned out the apartment I found was in Midtown East, which is very much of a business area. And you know what? I love it here. I never even would have considered living here, but this is what was available at the time, and it worked out well for me. So I would say be open to a neighborhood you hadn't considered before, especially if you're not from New York. You probably don't know the different neighborhoods. So be open to recommendations.
That's good advice. I'm hearing that real estate in New York can be a little crazy. And what do you think is causing it? And are you seeing multiple offers on properties? Has that come back?
Well, it hasn't come back yet. Um, we've kind of been in a slump the past 6 months, largely driven by the high interest rates. And it's not just buyers that are affected with the interest rates in terms of them getting mortgages, but sellers are also reluctant to list their properties because they are living in a property which has a 3% mortgage. So we've kind of been stuck on both ends. And in the last few weeks, we've seen the beginning of a downtick of rates, and people are calling their mortgage brokers like crazy now, trying to refinance what they have at 7%, bringing it down to 5.9. But everyone's holding their breath right now for a rate cut from the Fed, and we're hoping for everybody. Everybody's been sitting on the sidelines for a
Yeah.
good year, so hopefully everybody now will be incentivized to come back into the market. So it has right now we are still strongly in a buyer's market. You can get what you want, and sellers are being negotiable because they stuff hasn't moved. Things are on the market 6, 9, 12 months. So if you want to get in before the stampede, which we anticipate by the end of the year, now's a good time, actually.
That's what I'm telling clients as well. And I'm hearing throughout the United States. Where do you think the majority of your buyers are coming from?
This year, I have done quite a number of deals with mothers and fathers buying properties for their either college kids or kids relocating to New York for a first job. And they are buying $1 to $2 million properties. And the reason they're buying is that the rental market is off the hook, crazy, overpriced, expensive. Not only is the rental market so overpriced, the rental market is overpriced because all those people that are sitting on the sidelines afraid to go into a mortgage have stayed in their rentals, which has just continued to drive rental prices up and made them very hard to get. So the smart people are putting some money into equity and moving their kids into that property. Now, the the sideline of what's happening with these people buying for their kids is that after they buy for their first kid, they have the second kid that also needs an apartment. So now we're doing the second transaction, and then once both kids are settled, guess what? Mom and dad need a place to be a pied a terre in town to visit their kids and check up on them when they're here. So that has been really the profile of what this year has looked like for me. A lot of that. And on the sell side, I'm working with a lot of retirees who are moving to Florida or moving to Long Island and are getting rid of the apartment they've had for the past 10, 20, sometimes 40 years.
We talked a little bit about the foodiness in New York City. For me, I was very sad, and this was after the pandemic, that Carnegie Deli closed. That was one of my favorite places. And then there's a cupcake shop that I'm just forgetting right now. But in New York City, it is a foodie destination. Would you tell me a little bit about the culinary experiences that people can find in New York City?
Oh my God, it's endless. All right, starting at the lower end on Ninth Avenue in the 40s, you have about 10 blocks with one interesting, inexpensive ethnic restaurant after another. So if you're coming out of theater and you walk a few blocks to Ninth Avenue and you walk downtown a few blocks, you have your pick of really interesting stuff from every country of the world. You have, there are Michelin starred restaurants all over town. There are famous chefs. You have hubs of the finest restaurants in the Time Warner Center, for example, or you go into the big hotels. You go into the Sherry Netherland. You have Cipriani, but then there's also Cipriani downtown. Soho is a real mecca for high-end dining now, as is the West Village. You also have it up on Fifth and Madison Avenue. And what's amazing about New York is that people use Uber Eats like crazy. You can order from any restaurant in the city. If all you want is a coffee and croissant, they will deliver it to your doorman. Or a three-course meal you'll get delivered to your doorman. Then you name it. There's a whole neighborhood that specializes in sushi. There's a whole neighborhood that specializes in Indian food. Then you can go down to Little Italy, which still has like the most interesting restaurants. Chinatown is adjacent to Little Italy. There's one little divey place after another that has like amazing food. So if you're into trying food, it's really a paradise.
The culinary experience is truly one of a kind in New York. You can't really find that anywhere else because you can get so many different types of foods in such a small location. I remember my parents went to New York for the first time, and this was about 15, 20 years ago. And it was at 1 a.m. in the morning, and I received a text. And a picture. We're having a slice of pie and a piece of pizza. My mom says, "This is what they call it here, pie." And it could be at all hours, which is amazing.
100%.
So
100%.
we shut down here in Northern California, but New
I
York,
know. I've been there.
yes. How has the real estate market changed in the recent years, particularly in regards to relocation trends?
There was really a stoppage of international buyers during COVID, obviously.
Hmm.
So prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of deals with people from all over Europe and the Middle East. That came to a halt during COVID, and now I'm happy to say the foreign buyer has finally returned. So China has really slowed down because of the difficulty of getting cash out of the country. But I did a deal last year with someone from Prague who bought a very large apartment in Midtown East. And I continue to work with a number of families from Germany who are sending their kids to school here. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of international students coming and parents wanting to provide for them. But it's coming back. The international traffic is definitely coming back this year.
That's where your speaking different languages is going to pay off. It does pay off.
Yep, hopefully, yeah.
How do you think technology and online resources have impacted the way people are approaching real estate in New York City?
I think it's a two-pronged approach when I'm working with a buyer. So I will start out by sending them listings that I think might appeal to them. I also make available to them a retail site called streeteasy.com, which they can go on and search for things that they like. So I will share with them my recommendations. Then they go on and look in the various neighborhoods, and they send me things that appeal to them. And then we talk about whether, what are the pluses and minuses of that, and we add that, then we start building a list together. So anything I send them as a recommendation, they can do a deeper dive on the internet and see all the photos and see what they think. And they can also send me suggestions of things that I perhaps hadn't thought of for them. See, it's interesting. People come and they say, I want to live in Greenwich Village in a 2-bedroom apartment on a high floor, and I want to be near Washington Square Park. And then they end up buying something on the Upper West Side near Central Park that was never even on their radar when they first started looking. So I usually find that what people say they want when they first start isn't where they end up. So that's why I always press for being open to new neighborhoods, open to suggestions.
Technology helps in the end.
Yes,
Hopefully not
big
over
help.
technology.
It's not that technology is competing with my skill set. It's that we are working together we're both working on finding the right place.
That's very well said. To close this out, because now I'm done with the questions, tell us a little bit about your favorite client story.
My favorite client story is a story of an international family. And I have known this family for almost the whole time I've been in real estate. My first year at my previous brokerage, I was coming into the building, and a father and daughter were standing in the lobby having a conversation in German. And I walked right up to them and I asked how I could be of help. And they said, well, they're looking for a real estate agent to help them find an apartment. So I said, great. And, German is my native language, so it's very easy for me to work with German speakers. And it turns out their objective was to get an apartment for the whole family, like a 4-bedroom apartment, to rent for 8 months, furnished, because they wanted to get a feeling of what it's like to live in New York. And I will tell you, for the neighborhood they wanted, Soho, Greenwich Village, A, it was not easy. B, it's really tough to get someone that will let you have it's illegal to have a lease for under 12 months. So for someone to give you a lease that will allow you to cancel after 8 months, and also find them something that was at their taste level, which is a very, very highly sophisticated level. So we looked 3 days, and I found them something that they absolutely loved. And then they came several months later with all their bags. And when we got to the apartment, the owner had not prepared the apartment correctly. It wasn't clean, and they hadn't emptied out their personal items, which should have been done. So that was actually New Year's Eve. So on New Year's Day, I came with a crew of cleaning people. New Year's Day,
Wow.
cleaning people and packers. And we worked the entire day to pack up the stuff that shouldn't have been there and to clean the apartment from top to bottom. And when the family came back that night, it was good. But imagine arriving here from Europe, expecting one thing, and none of that was delivered. Thank God I was able to save the relationship. So then,
And you had the
yeah,
connections to be able to have the people there to assist in cleaning it up New Year's Day, that typically everybody has
New
off.
Year's Day, I was calling people on New Year's Eve to
Wow.
get them to come work the next morning. So that worked out. So at the end of that time frame, they decided, their daughter decided to go to school in New York. So we set about buying her. We actually bought her 2 apartments. The first one was a short time only, and then we bought her a second apartment. And when she got her second apartment, that I needed a gut renovation, so I was able to refer them to the right contractor and interior designer who organized the whole thing for them. They ended up becoming friends with those people, and they ended up buying from me a family-sized apartment in a new development that they bought from plans, which they waited a year to get into. And then we used the same designer and contractor to bring that apartment to the ready for them there. And let's see what happened then. Then the daughter left New York for a few years, and they needed her apartment rented out, which I did, and that was during COVID. We rented it out twice during COVID. Then she came back, moved back in, and after a year decided to sell that apartment, which I got a record price for them on that apartment. And then the parents sold the family size apartment. So these people love New York. They now own nothing in New York. I think it's only a matter of time till they come back.
So they can. It sounds
Yeah.
like not only do they love New York, they love you to be able to
Well,
assist them with all of what they need.
right. The other nice thing is that I often get calls from the mom from Europe. Can you go shopping for me at Saks Fifth Avenue? I need this, that, and the other thing, and just send it to me. And there might be things she wants that aren't available in Germany. So of course I do that for her. It's my
That's
pleasure.
fun. Oh,
Yeah.
and then while you're there shopping for her, you can shop for yourself.
Mhm.
It-
Maybe window shop. Window shopping is for me.
well, Dolly, thank you so much for being on the Real Estate Review with me, Alan Canas, with Engel Völkers Silicon Valley. It has been wonderful chatting with you. You are, like I said, you are a beautiful individual. You are my referral source for New York. Anybody listening, you are the professional for New York City. And so I truly appreciate the time that you've taken. Thank you so much.